The PGA Tour Fall Series starts this week in wine country up in Northern California, Napa, California. So Keith Stewart joins us here on this Tuesday on the Early Line on SportsGrid. Keith, we appreciate the time. Thank you for being here as always on TEL.
Ben, Joe, good morning. Hey, Joe, congratulations. The Louisville police just called. They called me and they said, thank God that the Miami-Dade police have done such a good job, because now they're suddenly off the hook as far as arresting superstars in the sports world.
Always a confusing time when that happens.
Yes.
So, Keith, let's look at where things are before we dive into the Fall Series with what we saw at the end of the FedExCup playoffs. Scottie Scheffler, unlike the previous two seasons, does triumph at Eastlake. 30 under par, of course, with the starting strokes included, as the FedExCup champion this year in 2024. A green jacket, 7 PGA Tour victories. We discussed, Keith, of course, how things would be in the competition for the PGA Tour Golfer of the Year between Scottie Scheffler and Xander Schauffele. You add in a gold medal for Scottie as well. Is Scottie Scheffler the PGA Tour Player of the Year in 2024?
Well, Ben, there's without a doubt that he has earned that right this year. He's had a historic year, and I think that becomes now part of the conversation. After winning the FedExCup and taking home the $25 million prize and basically cementing himself as the golfer of 2024, it's like, okay, well, where does this year compare to the great years of Tiger Woods that we saw in the early 2000s? And that's more of the conversation that I think that we're going to be having this fall once Scottie is actually designated the PGA Tour Player of the Year and the players get their votes in. But it's an exciting time for the PGA Tour because the fall becomes part of limbo. The top 50 in the FedEx Cup points that made it all the way to Denver when I was back out there, those guys are set. Their numbers are set in stone. But the rest in the top 125 have 8 events this fall with which to gain a spot and their 2025 card. And we start this week out in Napa at the ProCore Championship.
And we know, Keith, in years past, we were talking that you've got a couple of Wyndham Clark, you've got Sahith Theegala, I think is the favorite, or Max Homa as well as another name who obviously has not been playing well. Let me start with this. What under wins this tournament? Because this feels like a Birdie Fest USA, no?
Oh, there's no doubt about that, Joe. Par 72 scorecard measuring just a little over 7,100 yards with 4 par 5s. The average winning score over the last 5 years is 19 under par. The last 10 winners have averaged somewhere in the ballpark of 24 subpar scores over 72 holes. So, a third of the holes that they're going to play, they're going to make birdie or better on. So, and at the length that these guys are going to play, we have 9 par 4s of the 10. They're under 435 yards. These guys drive the ball 300 yards in the air. That's a wedge to attack all of these holes. And if you look historically at the guys that have played well here, not just Sahith Theegala, who's defending champion, but then the 2 years before that, Max Homa. When Max was in the prime of his playing ability, right, he was driving the ball in play all the time, and he is a super good putter, very opportunistic. So he hits it close with a wedge, and he makes a ton of birdies, and that's why he was such a good fit here. Now, Max has got a lot on his plate right now. He's the last captain selection for this President's Cup team, and those matches happen in 2 weeks. There's 6 guys here that are in the matches that are competing in the ProCore Championship, and in Theegala, Wyndham Clark, Max Homa, these guys at the top of the board. Corey Connors, I get the feeling that as we talk about, the favorites and everything, I'm going to look past those guys because overall, I think they have to be, especially Theegala, even as the defending champ. It's his first time going to one of these matches. It's his first President's Cup for Wyndham Clark. Yes, he went to Rome last year for the Ryder Cup. Max Homa's got a lot on his plate. He just switched coaches. I mean, these guys, I'm going to skip past the President's Cup guys when I look at the ProCore, kind of early leans, and I'm definitely going to be looking further down the board when we get to that point.
Just over 2 weeks away, the 2024 President's Cup up in Montreal between Team USA and the international team as well. We'll talk about that in a few weeks' time. So, Keith, you mentioned looking deeper down the board can always be a time during the Fall Series on the PGA Tour to find some big plus money prices. Who gets your attention?
Well, you know what? Over the last 10 years, the average pre-tournament odds of the winners have been somewhere around 90-1 or plus 9,000. So we got to look a little bit deeper down the board. Oh, yeah. So there's one guy that we've been talking about a couple times off and on, whether it was Golf Wednesday or with you guys on Tuesday morning, and that's J.J. Spaun. Back in Minnesota at the 3M, top 10, 9th. He was on nobody's radar, and we were playing him at Read the Line. A week later, he goes to the Wyndham, and he comes in third. Now, he didn't make the playoffs because he had a nice run toward the end of his season, but he's still hitting the ball great. Over his last 5 starts, he's gaining over 7 strokes against the field, and he sits right at that 40-1 mark, that plus 4,000. Now, as we start talking about him here on SportsGrid, that number is going to drop, so I would jump after him early. He's definitely one of my early leans on the early line. The other guy, speaking of fours, 4th place last year here at the ProCore Championship, Eric Cole, and he's been a little hot lately. Now, his big peccadillo is getting the ball in play off the tee. You don't have to hit driver everywhere here at the Silverado Resort on the North Course, which they play this tournament and have since 2014. So it definitely favors Cole, who's an excellent wedge player and an unbelievable putter and scorer. Guy makes a ton of subpar scores, and that's why he was 4th here last year. He's sitting at plus 4,500. So those two are very good early leans on the early line.
Got to ask you, Keith, what I always say about the old guys, right? And the old guys have been showing up over the last couple of tournaments here. So does Kuchar, does Webb, Simpson? How far can we go with the old guys in this one?
I mean, you can go as far as you want. The captain of the International President's Cup team, Mike Weir, he's even here teeing it up. I mean, this guy doesn't have something to do in 2 weeks. I mean, it's crazy. But you know what? When it comes to the fall, these guys, if they slide, if they pull off a couple top 10s and they slide into that top 125, they get their status for 2025. I know a lot of this doesn't amongst football and everything else, what's going on. But those guys that sit between 50 and 150 on the points list, this is a big deal for the next 3 months. And you know what? We're going to see some great golf along the way.
Keith Stewart, we appreciate the time. Thank you for being here on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. We'll talk in a few weeks, getting ready for the President's Cup as well.